The stream is live. Well, welcome everybody to Stramash Media. We're back. The last time you saw us, we were hoping that Scotland would have a great performance at the World Cup. The fans certainly did. And it's welcome back, Glenn and Alan, who were there. We'll get your evidence of the Tartan Army, the good parts and the bad parts, if there was any bad parts. But first of all, let's start with you, Chris, up there in the corner. Steve Clarke took us there. Were you happy what Scotland did? We beat Haiti. We were expected to, but we weren't expected to beat the other two teams. Happy or all right with that?
No, I mean, I think it was definitely a failure. We scraped against Haiti, and then Hanley did his usual. And against Morocco, they're a right good team, but they were absolutely there to be beat. You know, against France in the first 15 minutes, they ran them ragged, but we, even after losing the goal, you know, really they were definitely there to be taken, and it's hungry again, and it just, you know, we should have been a bit more aggressive. And against, I don't playing it for the back. It's, to be honest, against Brazil, you know, when you see Celtic playing Barcelona, literally the players don't have a second to think and they'll make mistakes. But McKenna had all the time in the world, so did Henry, Robbo. So yeah, just not enough effort and just not enough confidence, I think.
Fair enough, Chris. David, Chris kind of alluded to it. Was that Steve Clarke's fault, or was that the players' fault? Or were they going under his guidance to keep the ball at the back and play a canny game when it failed? Who's to blame for all this, do you reckon?
Crikey, that's some question, Norrie. I think the manager has to take the blame at the end of the day, but I'm not a Grant Hanley fan. And the defence has just been atrocious from watching on TV, in my opinion. I'm not a Steve Clarke fan, as you know, but you know, Alan made some valid points about his tenure over the years. But I think now has to be a change. But I'm glad he resigned. Don't understand why he got a 4-year contract weeks before the World Cup. I think that was utter madness.
We'll get into that later in the show, David. Don't worry, SFA are not getting off the hook with this. But yet. Well, Alan, you were there. You seen the game. We saw it on telly, but it's kind of different the way you see it in telly. What was your opinion on the matches?
The matches were abysmal. You know, you could see in the first game against Haiti that they made mistakes and they gave the ball away far too easily. And I said in that game, if we do that against Morocco and Brazil, who are a far superior side, then we're going to get punished for it. And we did get punished for it. And, you know, I think that, yeah, there was mistakes made by Steve Clarke. You know, playing it from the back, I think was a mistake. I think sometimes we didn't utilise the space that the Brazilians had given us. And basically, you know, I think if you give a world-class striker like Vinicius Junior space like that, he's going to take it. I think the further Morocco and Brazil get in the World Cup, though, I mean, they potentially could be get to the semi-finals. Does that negate things a bit, you know, because they are very, you know, Morocco had only lost one game in tickets in 4 years. And it's still Brazil, you know. People are saying, oh, well, this is not the Brazil of old, but they've still got, you know, Marquinhos, they've still got Neymar, they've still got Vinicius Junior, you know, they've still got some quality players in that. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we just couldn't compete with that. But I think that, you know, the overall experience of going to the World Cup, those 8 days in Boston were like nothing I've ever experienced before. You know, I've been to World Cup, I've been to European Championships, but just what happened in Boston was just absolutely transformational. And without Steve Clarke, we wouldn't have gotten there.
I'll come on to Glenn after that, because we'll be covering the Tartan Army later on. Glenn, it's always been thrown at Steve Clarke that he's very loyal to certain players. Do you think that backfired when he could have brought other players in, but he took the players that he has nurtured for the last 10 years and still given them a berth in the Scotland team? Meanwhile, the fans are shouting at him, what are you doing? Lyndon Dykes, for example. You know, what has he done? He's not getting a game for his club, but he's in a Scotland squad.
Yeah, look, there's an argument for that, but it's the way he manages. It's the way he's always managed since he's been in charge of Scotland, and it's got him to three. It's got the country to three tournaments. We haven't performed as well as we should do. But I think Scotland fans, and I include myself in this as well, need a reality check. We had a group, the only group in the tournament that had two teams in the top 10 of the world. I think Brazil and Morocco are either 5 or 6 or 6 and 7. Now. We made mistakes. We're not that good. We just, we get carried away with, the win against Denmark was tremendous. But if you go back to that game, although it was one of the best nights of my footballing life, etc., we had great moments. But overall, we didn't retain the possession very well. We made mistakes, okay? And lucky for us that Denmark weren't as good as maybe they had been in the past, and they're a team on the downwards spiral. If you make those mistakes against teams that are like 6 and 7 in the world, you're going to get punished. And what we did, I don't think it's Steve Clarke's fault. He made a few mistakes, definitely, and maybe you can argue that he was over loyal. I've said that before as well. But the mistakes that were made that really cost us the games against Morocco, that's player mistakes. Against Brazil, oh my God, it could have been worse. We got away with one with Henry. But every single defender, very experienced guys that have played at a relatively high level in the professional game, made horrendous basic mistakes. And you can't hold that against the manager. We're just not good enough. And my big question mark is this: it's not Steve Clarke, it's not the players, it's actually what the SFA do at the ground level. Now, if you have a quick look at their accounts, they take £80 million in revenue. They've taken £9 million in for this tournament. They've qualified for the last 2 Euros, and they spend 25% of their income on salaries, but they only spend 10% on player development. There's your problem.
That is the problem, Glenn, and nobody's speaking about this. For years and years, we've been talking about a dilapidated Hampden. There's plenty in the funds there to make a start on that. Maybe even make a bespoke new stadium somewhere in Scotland where there's plenty of parking, where most people can get to, not just the Central Belt. But nothing's happened. And for my part, anyway, Mulroney and Walker, who elected these people to this really lofty position in charge of millions of pounds? Not us, not the fans. And that's the problem. They're not accountable to anybody. And results will always go on the manager, not them. And they'll carry on to the next time. You can go back as far as Ernie Walker, Jim Farry, a lot of them. They've done nothing to further the cause of Scottish football. Even when we had the best players in the world, we were ranked in 1978, we were ranked 8th team in the world. That was the highest we've ever got. That was the highest, and they didn't do it. And in fact, I honestly think they're working against Scottish football, not for it. But anyway, I'll bring Chris back to you again, because if we'd have got the penalties, the McGinn went down, he never got a shout. McTominay, he got a touch. Those are the tiny things that create the differences at World Club football, World Championship football. If they'd have gone our way, could it have been a different story?
Well, you're hoping you get them. You're hoping somebody converts at least one of them. It was this sort of, what if? But I keep maintaining that. I agree, Morocco are a right good team, but just we had to just show a bit of spirit against them. And I think we could have got a goal. The penalties might have been soft, but there's so many soft penalties given these days, and the game's changed. And that this is the game now. Scotland's sort of taking the moral high ground and no diving and all that. It's not going to get you anywhere, sadly. So I hate myself for saying it, but you've just got to be the same as everybody else doing it. But it would have helped, and just getting through would have been monumental, because it's the third tournament. So after that, and you see teams like I agree with Glenn. It was a tough group, but teams like Cape Verde, they're playing Argentina tonight. So yeah, just time for them to go. And penalties would have just, I think, papered over the cracks. But I would have taken qualification. I would have just said, yep, it's improvement. But sadly, we didn't get the penalties.
But that's the thing, though, Chris. If we'd got those penalties, we might have got into the group stage, but we didn't, and that's what went against us. We couldn't score goals otherwise. I don't think we had any shots on target in one of the games which is abysmal. You know, it really is. David, you know, we're watching it from afar. We're watching the Tartan Army. We're all getting really buoyant here in Scotland. And then we get the anthems. It's one of the noisiest anthems you could ever hear. I think most of the Bostonians were there supporting Scotland if they were at the match. But yet it didn't spur on the team. It didn't galvanise them. It seemed to work against them.
Possibly is too frightened to lose the first game, Norrie. Losing the first game would have been disastrous. So maybe there's a bit of that. I've never played professional football, so but I'd hate to think what the heart rates must have been. But you know, one deflected goal against a team like that, I just don't think it's good enough. And yeah, you can't blame Steve Clarke for that, I suppose, but it's just not good enough, as Glenn quite rightly says.
Well, Alan, Ian Wright, not a man I'll quote much in this show, by the way, but he's got it right. He's saying that the tactics, if you watch carefully, and I think you alluded to this a bit, Alan, as well, didn't use space, didn't get people running off the ball to collect the ball. They were like statues. And there was a clip, I think, of Lawrence Shankland just standing there in the semicircle, the halfway circle. And he didn't move. And he's got to go and he's got to take players away from him. Because if he moves, a player goes with him, leaves space.
Yeah.
They didn't do that. So I'm going to get back to this. And who's ultimately responsible for that? That must be Steve Clarke.
Well, as the manager, he's got to have, you know, he could be having, you know, he presumably has studied Brazil. He knows how they play. He knows where the space is going to be. So he's saying to them, you know, you go here, you go there. You know, let's look at it. And we didn't seem to do that. As I say, it was just let's put it back. And I think the only one of our players who acquitted themselves of anything, the two of them, I think, was Lewis Ferguson and Kenny McLean. I think they were probably the only Scottish players you can point to and go, yeah. But then I didn't think he used Finlay Curtis enough. I think he made a mistake as well. He didn't start Ben Doak against Morocco. You know,
exactly.
You know, I think as I say, there's you know, we can pick holes in his tactics, and I think, as I say, that's up to him. And it's not just one tournament. It's 3 tournaments where we have not turned up. You know, we didn't turn up at the last Euros. We turned up for the game against England. In the first tournament, you know, we turned up for the 0-0 draw there, which was one of the, you know, that's one of the best nights, probably other than the Denmark game. That was the best one. But in 9 games of tournament football, you know, we've turned up for one of them, 2 of them, maybe the Haiti game, and we haven't turned up for any of the rest of them. And I think so when we get there doesn't seem to be an overall cohesive plan for. You know, that recognises, right, okay, we're not going to have possession all the time. So what do we do when we get it? And it seemed to be that I thought every time we got the ball, we gave it away far too easily. We gave it far. Yeah. You could see it in the Haiti game. We gave it away far too easily. Yeah. And the week before, we had gone and given a very confident performance against Bolivia. And I was thinking, yeah, that's good. That's how we should have been. You know, so how we played against Bolivia is how we should have played against Haiti. So I don't understand how we went within a week from, you know, absolutely tearing apart a very good Bolivia side that had beaten Brazil, albeit it was at altitude, to giving a very, very placid performance against Haiti. And, you know, it was almost like they didn't believe that they belonged there, I felt. Particularly the big players. You know, maybe McTominay, I mean, I don't go single anybody out, but I just felt that the big players didn't turn up and didn't go. They didn't say we're here to be. We're entitled to be here. Yeah. And I think that there's a thing about showing respect to players, but then there's also being afraid of them and everything. And I always feel that, you know, if you're a fan of an underdog, the way to beat the bigger teams is to get in their faces. You know, you have to get in their faces right from the whistle, in their faces, shut them down, don't give them any space, intimidate them. You know. And we didn't do that. And again, I think that's on the manager. That's on him to come in and go, here's what I'm going to do. And as I say, I think, you know, I don't think he utilised the players that he had well enough. I don't think he utilised Gannon Doak well enough. He had Finlay Curtis there, who's a brilliant player.
Yeah.
Didn't utilise him enough, I don't think.
No.
And had he done so, we may have been having a different discussion now. Had we gotten through, then we would be, we'd be Sir Steve Clarke. He'd be undisputed king of Scotland just now.
Yeah.
But as things stand, we're now in this kind of this morass, this black hole.
Well, it's deja vu, isn't it? It's the same as it always is. Even after 20 odd years without being in the World Cup, it's still that sinking feeling we've got.
Absolutely, and I think we're in. We'll have, but I think we do have to remember where we were at when Steve Clarke was appointed. We'd just been beaten 3-0 by Kazakhstan by Alec McLeish, who was an abysmal manager. So I think we have to get this one right, or it could be another 28 years before we're in a World Cup again. Imagine how embarrassing would it be that the Euros have been held in Scotland and we're not there. So I think that this can't just be this can't be a short-term appointment. The SFA really have to go for who the best candidate is, and I think that David Moyes. There's nobody else.
Well, David Moyes, I don't think David Moyes will move. He's in a very, very well-paid position at Everton. He's got a team that he can pick, he can choose, he can buy. We can't do that with Scotland. I think it would be a step down for him, to be honest, at this stage. But Glenn, I want to get back to this Steve Clarke, and then we'll move on from that. But before the World Cup, we saw the squad, and every one of us said the goalkeeping situation is dire. He picked 3 goalkeepers who aren't even playing first-team football. Now, when you can pick somebody like Finlay Curtis, and you can pick other players, why couldn't you pick one goalkeeper who was playing full-time football every week, Scott Bain, and put him in there? Because he's got the match fitness, he's got the match nous to take on the pitch. He never done that, and he left behind probably one of the best goalies we've got just now. Because Craig Gordon never got a sniff. Liam Kelly will never get a sniff. So what are they doing there? What are they doing there?
Well, they're there in case there's injuries. Obviously, he has to go with a number one. He has to make his mind up. He's the manager. Do we agree with it? No, I would definitely have Bain there. Okay, but he gave Bain a chance. I think he got a half. I know that's not a lot of time, etc. He's obviously watched him, and in his mind, he doesn't rate him. I think there's a bigger problem. There's a problem with the league and the way the league runs itself. There's a problem with the way that clubs recruit players and develop players. The issue is we hardly have any goalkeepers that are actually Scottish goalkeepers playing in our division or our leagues or abroad and actually commanding like regular places. Now you go through it, you'll be struggling to get more than 10, and of those like 8, 9, 10, none of those ones are playing at a decent level at all. Now I remember Germany, I think it was 2010 or maybe it was just before that, they actually got to a final. But Oliver Kahn took them a fair way along. They'd beaten Saudi Arabia like really quite hard in the first game, and but they never really starred apart from that. Okay, and at the end of that, Germany, the German Football Federation turned around and said, "We've got an issue here. We don't have the quality here." Now, I mean, obviously, it hasn't borne the fruits they're looking for. What they said was, they actually said to their clubs, because their clubs there's no majority foreign owners or anything. They said, "Your job, as well as playing in this league, is to produce players for the national team." That was an embarrassment, and now you actually have to start like developing German players. And you saw some of the guys coming through, etc. Okay, we have had think tank after think tank, etc. Blah blah blah. The league does not serve the national team, and you can understand why, because some of the teams in there they want to be competitive in Europe, etc. But we need to have a radical rethink. I mean, the only manager that actually really plays Scottish players is McGlynn.
Yeah.
The rest of them, look at Hearts. One season of success. Derek McInnes, and he actually, he stopped really bringing on the young Scottish boys. That's it. There's he never did it. Shankland never got a chance at Aberdeen when McInnes was there, and he's had a long, windy journey to get where he is. Okay, there's lots of others that just haven't been given an opportunity and they've gone away. We don't develop the players. 10% of their budget is on developing players. They had, that's the SFA. They had a structure whereby they had these special schools, okay, for developing talent. Within 4 or 5 years, they cut that budget in half. 25% salaries, though.
I know.
There's huge question marks. We continue going down the same way, and then we wonder why in 9 World Cups we've won 5 matches.
Well, I think, Glenn, we've got to chat about the SFA and who they are and what they do and how they're letting down Scottish. The Tartan Army, they're letting down everybody. And there was one of the things with Steve Clarke that I didn't like. I'll go back to Chris. Chris, we were watching Match of the Day, and then there was always a bit that Thomas Tuchel was in the crowd watching players all the time. Steve Clarke was based in England throughout his tenure as Scotland manager, and he never came up and watched any of the games. Okay, you could have scouts up here looking, but that's not the same. So there's lots and lots of things that we could say about Steve Clarke, but now he's gone. And by the way, I hope he doesn't get a 4-year contract. I hope they've managed to wangle some of that money back. But no in the SFA, I wouldn't put it past them. But Chris, at this point, if we had to choose a manager, who would you go for?
Well, Jockstein, obviously, but we've not got a Ouija board. Well, I mean, Moyes is that. I mean, you're saying it'll be a step back for Moyes, but I think he's I'm kind of desperate here. But I think he's of an age where, he might be interested in doing it. So that's really. I mean, obviously we know Postecoglou's out, so that would be my first choice, to be honest, if we could get him. But I don't know. I don't think he wouldn't come because of money. I don't think that'd be the reason. But that would be that would be who I would want.
David, who's on your radar for the Scotland job?
Derek McInnes.
Even though what Glenn was saying about not taking on youngsters, just playing a settled team, he's more like Steve Clarke.
Yes, I would agree with that, but it might be different in a national setup. But I think we're, as well as being bereft of goalkeepers, we're bereft of managers, I think, to be perfectly honest. And it's going to be a struggle. I don't think Moyes will come for whatever reason. No. And I take the point, you should have somebody that's based in Scotland. I 100% take that point on board. And Moyes is not going to relocate to Scotland, never in a million light years.
Yeah. You need somebody that's here, breathes and lives and knows Scottish football. Yeah, absolutely. Alan, what about John McGlynn? He's done it at Falkirk, taking them through the leagues, but is he World Cup manager material?
He's not. No. John McGlynn's a great manager, but he's not Scotland. And in my opinion, he's not a Scotland class manager. And again, you look through it. Once you got rid of McInnes and Moyes, there's very, very, there's just all the low hanging fruit now. Alec Neil possibly. But what I think, you talked about the SFA and the structure. Why is Scott Gemmell still in the job? He's been in the under 21s for donkeys years, and he's supposed to be developing the talent. And as far as I can see, he hasn't done anything. And he's been talked about as an outside candidate. But another name that has been mentioned was Brendan Rodgers. I'd take him in a second. I'd have Brendan Rodgers in a second. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Most successful ever Celtic manager. Good knowledge of Scottish football. He's been successful wherever he's been. So yeah, if Brendan Rodgers became available and took that job, I believe he is on a short list of sorts. So the tabloids say. I'd have Brendan Rodgers in a second. I think that'd be a great appointment.
Pep Guardiola's out of a job just now.
Yeah, take him. Yeah, well, we might end up with Roberto Martinez. Might be another kind of. I think he might be out of a job at the end of this World Cup, and so. He has a knowledge of Scottish football. His wife's Scottish, so that's
right. He done his tickets at Largs, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, well, everybody. Yeah, so did Mourinho. So Largs is very well known coaching spot. It's one of the best in the world for getting the pro licenses. So I think it's going to be difficult to get a Scottish-based successor. But again, I say as much as I think John McGlynn's a great manager, I don't think he's not got for me, he hasn't done it consistently at the higher level. But I mean, if he got the job, I would, obviously I would support him. But I don't know. He's not. For me, he wouldn't be a first choice.
No.
But I think
what about you, Glenn? What about you, Glenn? Any ideas? Would you be as against John McGlynn as Alan is, or are you much more liberal thinking?
I don't know. McGlynn's got a decent track record, kind of thing. Whether McGlynn would want it, I don't know. I mean, there's a habit of younger managers. I mean, in the back of my head is Alec Neil as well, but he's only 45. I think it's too early for him. Moyes is mid-60s, and even for him, because he's worked his way back up to a relatively peak position again, in the Premier League. He I think definitely see in the future, Moyes takes it. Definitely takes the job. He wants to do it. It's just whether the timing is right. Money's not an obstacle. He's made so much money, it's fine. He would obviously want just a reasonable package, and it'd be an honour for him to take it. But I think it's too early for him. McGlynn, I think he would do an okay job. He's surprised a lot of people about how he, the teams that he puts out there, the style he plays, etc. And with Alan, he wouldn't be my first choice. But to be fair, I don't really know who my first choice is. I'm racking my brain for managers that have a reasonable knowledge of Scottish football and would be available to take it, kind of thing. Even Neil Lennon popped into my head, but I don't think I wouldn't really go for him either. I think we're in a sticky situation. I'd love to see who else is on this shortlist from the SFA, because you look at McGlynn, he doesn't strike you as an appointee that the SFA would like. There's a certain type of manager they like. And I was very surprised a wee while back when they went for Gordon Strachan, because he's very opinionated and can be quite controversial. But they did it. So maybe again they'll go outside their comfort zone. They have to do something. It's crucial we get it right now. I mean, Alan, I think it was Alan said it. Can you imagine? Yeah, if we have the Euros here and we're not part of it, just an absolute disaster. It doesn't bear thinking about. But if they don't get this right, then that's exactly what we're looking at.
I know. Is it time for a question, Glenn? A quiz question?
Absolutely. I've got 3 and they're all World Cup based. Alan, usual. Can you go last? Okay. In Croatia's round of 32 match against Portugal, Ivan Perisic became the 6th man to score in 4 different World Cups, joining which 5 other players?
Ronaldo.
That's 1. He's done 6. Messi, that's 2. He's done 5.
Pele.
That's 3. He's done 4.
Maldini.
Closer.
No. Close it. That's it. That's 4.
Closer, yes. Yeah, German.
Yeah. 1 to
one
go.
more. Is there one more?
Yeah. Starts with a U.
Eusebio? No, it's E.
That's
No,
an E.
that's an E. But yeah, no, not him.
U. His
Yeah.
first name's U. His first name's U.
Yeah. Starts with U, yeah.
Is it a German player?
I think so. I must admit, I did this quiz in a hurry. So I didn't check. I double checked the names with a couple of different sources, but I didn't check all the nationalities.
Right.
That's what I use.
Yeah, Uwe. Uwe is the first name, or Uwe.
Uwe wrestler. Uwe. Yes, Uwe.
Surname starts with an S.
Aye.
Schenker.
German. 60s, 70s, that boy. He scored goals. Sealer.
Bang on! Well done, David. Star prize today.
David boy.
Do you want the second one just to leave hanging?
Aye, give us the second one too.
Okay.
Because we're halfway through.
Yeah, brilliant one there, David. In Spain's 3-0 win over Austria, Unai Simon surpassed which great Italian keeper to become the goalkeeper with the longest clean sheet record at 519 minutes in the history of the World Cup?
Dino's
Must
off.
be Buffon.
Dino's off.
Dino's off, no.
Buffon?
No.
Good shout.
Palaiuca? No.
Buffon. Did we say Buffon?
Yeah, it's not him.
Walter
He's got
Zenga.
a very un-Italian sounding first name.
Walter.
Yes.
Is it really him?
Walter Zenga.
Yeah, that's him. Bang on.
That's it. That's the one. Yeah. Couldn't get the second name, but I knew the first. Great question, Glenn. Great one. I think, do you know what? I need to get us focused back on the SFA and what we all think should happen with all the money they're getting in. Do you think, Chris, it should be a stadium? Do you think it should be grass pitches? It should be facilities for youngsters? Or is that a council thing? Is it not the SFA's remit? They will say. Can we get a joined up thinking between the Scottish Government, the local authorities and the SFA? That's never happened before. By the way, Glenn, or somebody mentioned that Germany had reappraised their system.
Yeah.
The Germans managed to talk to their own government, the German FA, and work out a strategy, just like the Icelandic government did. They got the Icelandic Football Association and they worked hand in hand. Why do you think, well, I won't ask you this, Chris, it's too difficult a question, but what do you think really needs to take, what would get people playing football?
I suppose seeing Scotland doing well in the tournament.
That
would get Wayne's back in the street, but obviously that turns out it was fairly wishful thinking. Well, I mean, just as Glenn mentioned, you know, if they're saying that the salaries are 2.5 times what the development is, then that's telling you where their priorities are. So, you know, if people will always go with the status quo if they're on big money. So it's just a case of you need to examine that. I think if you get more fan clubs, more clubs that are run by their fans, that would be a start. But you know, something has to change, just a wee change like that, and then more accountability. But at the minute, I just don't. They seem too far away for the fans, the people that buy tickets. So that, you know, that's sort of lofty. You know, even who are they sort of thing. You know, there's this sort of ambiguous they're out there somewhere. So I think there has to be a lot more accountability and a lot of the barriers taken down between the fans and who's actually running it. How that happens, I don't know.
Well, I'll put it this way, Chris. If you were in charge of the SFA, what would your priorities be? Would you create pitches, grass pitches? Would you create, all-weather facilities? What would you do? Would you go to Iceland, for example, and examine what they did, or Germany and see what they did, or what would you do?
Probably more likely to go to Germany because Iceland did well, but then they've sort of fallen away. But I mean, there are quite a lot of, you know, I mean, I've noticed when we were young, there was, you know, the Red Blaze and all that, and you know, the Mitre Moldmaster now. So there's definitely a lot more going on, but I think that would have happened anyway. But yeah, I mean, more focus on the skill. You know, you don't. I mean, I'm not a big fan of everybody gets a medal, but see the youngsters, you know, they shouldn't really. It should be about the talent really and the nurturing skills rather than, you know, I'm the biggest boy in that team, so I can move a ball 50 yards. I mean, I'll repeat what I always say: play football where the ball is a bit heavier, and even the biggest guy in the park can't kick it any harder than the weakest guy. That alone would literally, it's a great equaliser. I genuinely don't know why people don't do that. I'm hoping somebody on here can tell me, but I don't know why they don't do that, because straight away that puts the onus on skill.
It's some good suggestions here, Chris, honestly. But what I'm trying to do in this roundup of questions I'm asking is how fans, like we're ordinary fans, how we see things could be developed out with the SFA. And we're coming up with certain examples already. David, one of the things where I'm staying right now, houses are getting built at a rate of knots, taking over all kinds of greenland sites. So the kids aren't playing football, they're playing on their PCs, or they aren't even out on their bikes. There's no available grass for them to play the sports that we are supposed to be as our number one sport. So how do we get communities involved without having to put them through this regimented coaching systems? How do we get them playing freedom football, as they call it, where they can enjoy themselves, learning the game?
Sorry, I wish I didn't ask that, but when I was a kid, it was a long time ago, all we had was football. We didn't have any other distraction other than football. And that's not the case today. But the thing that shocked me is I don't have any kids that play football, but somebody was telling me that the kid to play in a basic football club in Edinburgh is like 20 quid a week.
Aye.
And my son's got two of his mates going to the States to play college football or whatever they call that thing. And the amount of money it's costing is, Glenn, it's eye-watering. It really is, and you think, blimey, this cannot be correct. But out in the middle of Edinburgh, there's no land in the middle of Edinburgh to play football, and unless you play a plastic pitch somewhere and pay a fortune. And there's so many other things for kids to do these days that are just get turned off, I think.
Yeah. So more brilliant points, Alan, coming through from simple questions about where we want to go with Scottish football. Where do you think, if you were in the SFA, what would your first thought process take you?
We'd go back to basics. I'd see what did we do before, and if I had a system that was working before, I'd re-implement it. Say what happened. How did we go from having players who were the backbones of Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, Arsenal, etc., who were winning European Cups, winning English Premierships? How did we go from that to where we are today? And I would reintroduce the system that works. And I would. It's down to money. I think. If you cut investment, then you'll get less. You'll get less development. So if we cut the money for development, then we'll get less of it. It's not a complicated equation to do. It's the same in anything. If you cut something, then you'll get less. So I would have investment in.
But Alan, would you, if you were at the head of the SFA, divvy up all the money and give more of it to Celtic and Rangers because they're the two top teams and they get all the money? That's kind of trickling down economics. That is basic libertarianism in Scottish football.
Well, what I would do is I would try and incentivise players or teams to have Scottish players in them. Right. And say, well, if you're going to put in more Scottish players, you get more of the money, and also have the stick as well. And maybe legislate for it. We used to have the 3 foreigner rule. I think the Rangers team that got to the 92 European Cup champions, or almost the semi-final, that had 8 Scottish players in it. So maybe we can have some sort of restrictions on that. Maybe we should be looking at penalising teams for bringing in foreigners when you can bring in homegrown talent. And and that's where our development has to be, and you have to make it. I think you have to make it you have to make it a bit fun as well. You go to any children's game on any Saturday morning, you have the parents standing screaming at them on how does that doesn't solve any, but that doesn't make you want to go. I'm going to do it. It's like, here's parents, living out their own failed fantasies of being a football player on their kids and, screaming at them and everything. That's not, not incentivizing. That's not going to incentivize people to go and play football. So, I think there has to be a real root and branch reform of all of this. But I think, this is all historic. You remember when, Jim Farry held up cadets registration, and then that was ultimately what Fergus McCann went after him for it.
Yeah,
and I think that was all just about. What I think that was about. I don't think that was about trying to give Rangers any advantage. What I think that was more about was Farry asserting his power and saying, "I'm unaccountable, and there's nothing you can do about it." And I think that mentality still persists to this day.
I think you're right.
Until that mentality goes, then we'll be stuck with this.
I think you're right. So, Glenn, how do we combat this? How do we make the SFA accountable to the fans, the Tartan Army? How do we march up to the SFA? Do we put banners at the next Scotland match? What do we do?
Well, it's the same with SRU. That's almost an impossible thing. They're so distant from the fans. The only way you can do it is to hurt them in the pocket. Which also kind of hurts the national game. So I don't know, but if I could jump back to something, because there is a solution to this. Okay, what we do with to develop the talent, etc., and improve it as a long-term plan, and we do what Iceland and Norway have done. So I know Iceland, they're not currently performing at the top, but for them to get as far as they did, remember they knocked England out of the Euros. In Euro 2016 with a population of 300,000. Every single village in Iceland has a 3G, 4G pitch, and it's free. There are 1,500 4G full-size pitches in Norway. They are free. So kids, they're not locked up. So kids can just go and play anytime they want. If there's an organised training session on, the kids get off. They do the coaching. Then the kids from the town, the village that just want to play, they can go there and play, kind of thing. And the Dennis Law Foundation up here started doing some stuff whereby they've now introduced 4 what they call courts that are completely free in the city centre of Aberdeen. Costs about $500,000 to build them. They have to. It's hard getting the sites, etc. But they've got determination and they do it. And my kids played there for quite a few years. They're always busy. It's just kids against kids trying to beat each other. It's the same way that Spanish kids, minus the son, and the Portuguese kids play futsal on courts. Okay, taking people on, working on their intricate foot skills. Johan Cruyff said he didn't learn any of his football in an academy. He learned, that gave him an opportunity and a platform to play. But everything that he learned as far as a footballer was playing against his friend. He couldn't wait to get home from his club football to go and play with his friends, and he played it all the time. You need to make facilities free because all the best players, or most of them, come from a disadvantaged background. And almost every sport, this is their opportunity. They haven't got time or money for other things, but they've got time for this because it costs them nothing. Down with your mates with a ball, make it free, let them play. And it's worked for Norway. It worked for Iceland. And if you look at it like this, okay, if we took that £9 million...
Greg, can I just stop you for a second? Can I stop you?
Yeah.
Are we talking about these kids playing on an artificial pitch?
Some are artificial, some are just courts, e.g. concrete, low maintenance, etc. Kids are happy to run around on muggas is what they call them. Multi.
Yeah, but you can't tackle on these things. You really can't dive on these things.
Yeah, but in Spain and Portugal, their concrete courts are open 24/7. Kids can just go down and play, etc. If you take that $9 million, which should be a bonus, we didn't know that we're going to qualify. Okay, that's 18 courts. Go build them. Qualify for the next tournament, go build them. That shouldn't affect the actual current income. You shouldn't budget for that. If you get it, go develop the game. You're charged with looking after and nurturing and developing the Scottish football game. And that's what they have to do, not spending 25% on salaries and only 10% on the job that you have to do. Sorry.
Well, you're right, Glenn. But Chris, we've been talking previously on the podcast about a new league system being structured so that we can get more games, less games played against each other, and maybe see a more competitive league and then bring out football, because when kids watch the football on telly, they get inspired. That's how it happens. And when they watch good football and their local club's doing well, they want to support their local club. The way it is just now, we've got buses and trains full of people going down to support Celtic and Rangers every week. They're not playing football, they're supporting football. So the whole system from Doncaster, that guy Doncaster, who's the I think he's the chief exec of the SPFL, I don't know, from him to Mulvaney, Walker, all these people that are in these positions have no clue about what's happening in Scottish football. And this is why we must overturn them.
Yeah, and I agree, but it's, the question is how. I mean, that's absolutely, because if they're in the positions they're in just now, earning loads of money with little accountability, then if they've not really got a decent moral fibre, they can just kid themselves on and say, right, well, nothing to see here, we're doing okay. So, I mean, I would just come back to more fan-owned clubs, and you're hoping they can start to get a groundswell with that. But all these things take massive amounts of time, but they definitely can be done. But I think getting more clubs in the hands of fans would definitely help. And a lot of teams are scared of reconstruction because they don't really, they think it'll probably be good, but it's going to cost time and money. And are they going to come out at better or worse? But I mean, if we do nothing, we'll get exactly the same. So I definitely agree that we should try and get that, but only by putting more clubs in the hands of fans, I think, is going to be the momentum to really dislodge these guys from where they've managed to get in.
But the problem is, David, that as Chris says, all these clubs are a bit scared. It's not the clubs; it's the owners of the clubs who make all these decisions to have the same league, the same system. Why? Because they're all making money off it.
Yep.
The whole system is corrupt. It is not fit for purpose for a modern Scottish nation.
Absolutely, but to change that, you'd have to get the same people's agreement, and the turkeys aren't going to vote for Christmas, in my opinion.
Well, that's true.
Very, very difficult.
That's true, but if the Tartan Army, who are now recognised as a powerful voice in Scottish football,
Absolutely,
suddenly went to games, suddenly went to the football matches at Hampden with banners saying SFA out or SFA change, we need change, we want something with banners, something with at the front door when they're coming in their big Cadillacs, say something to them. Make sure that they know that the Tartan Army are against them.
I don't think banners will make any difference. I think Glenn hit it in the head, although he was reluctant to do it. You need to smack them hard in the pocket and just boycott the games till there's change. Simple as that, in my opinion.
Well, Alan, Tartan Army aficionado, would you boycott a Scotland game?
No, I wouldn't. No, absolutely.
Even if it was to give the SFA a bloody nose.
No, I didn't. I went through this period at Dens in the late 80s when Angus Cook was in charge, and it was, should we be boycotting Dens to get him out? And I didn't go at that point. And no, I've never boycotted games. I mean, other people could do it, but me personally, no. I always think the first loyalty is to the team. And
the team.
No matter how well intentioned, I think it would have a negative effect on the team. So I wouldn't do a boycott. No, it's not.
Would you boycott a Scotland-Israel game?
Absolutely, yeah. I would do that. Yeah.
What about the team?
Well, that's a different setup. That's a different thing. It's
a cause.
But one's a genocidal maniac company and another's a football administrator. There's not really a moral equivalence between the two of them. I wouldn't say.
Well, let me put it this way then. These people at the top of Scottish football are taking money from the fans, you and everyone else, the Tartan Army. You've got a vested interest that they spend your money carefully. When they're not doing that, shouldn't you be saying, wait a minute, stop this further and no more?
Well, what I do is use forums like this to advocate for change. There is more than one way to affect change. And, change always comes around by first you have to vocalise it and to make an idea of it and everything. And all change comes about through ideas and through the exchange of information and that. And I think even by voicing this, it starts a spark in that. So I'm not one. I don't ever believe this passive idea that we can't change things, because if we couldn't change things, then we would have, everything we've ever had has been won through struggle. And I'm not one for saying, well, there's no point in doing it. But I just think that a boycott would not be as effective as voicing your opposition through other means. So I would say.
Glenn, you're travelled with the Tartan Army, Germany. You've got a really good campaign portfolio. Would you take your disaffection to a Scotland match, or would you say no?
Yeah, it's a hard mix, isn't it? Because I mean, obviously, you want the team to qualify, etc. I don't know. I think one of the ways to hurt them financially would be to refuse to buy the merchandise. There are, the team. Everybody can do that. You can still actually support the team. They can still help them qualify for tournaments, etc. But there's many ways of getting Scotland Top, Scotland merchandise other than the SFA, and I think JD Sports are their main retailer. Yeah, there's ways around it, and that's a big contract for them. There are other ways to hurt them financially and still support the team.
But here's the thing: if we had a banner saying "Mulvaney, we're watching you," Walker, we're watching you, and they see it, they're going to be trembling in their shoes, because they now know they've been rumbled. At this precise moment, they don't accept they're going to be rumbled. They'll just get a new manager and we'll carry on as before. That's how we get change, Glenn. We scare them.
Oh,
they fear us.
I don't think they really care too much about the ordinary fan. I think a couple of banners. Look, I'm not against it. I just don't think that they're the kind of people that are sitting there trembling. I think you only hurt them when you threaten their position of power, and there has to be a better, harder way to do it. Then they'll just ignore banners. Yeah. I mean, if Scotland fans didn't turn up en masse, that would be a shock to the system, because they first and foremost they look after the coffers, etc. Okay, but the Tartan Army aren't going to do that. They have stayed away before, mostly through apathy. When times were really, really bad and you're getting crowds of like 30, 35,000. But they won't do it. If the team look like they're going to qualify for a tournament, they'll go there. It has to be a different way. These guys have got thick skin.
Yeah. Well, Chris, these guys have kind of exhausted it. But the thing about Scottish football is, if we want change, if we want to turn things around, we need to have either a fans forum, a very strong fans forum, to take on the SFA and get it absolutely televised and broadcast and show them that the fans are either with them or against them. Maybe that's a better idea. Maybe get a fans collection.
Well, we could certainly join together. Maybe Michael Stewart could head it up, but then obviously he'll not be getting into whatever banners he's got. You'll be seeing them in the clockworks in Mount Florida. But people need to band together, because we can moan all we want, but something has to happen. They're not going to be scared of banners or whatever. See, in a lot of ways, I think they would get some sort of perverse pleasure out of that, knowing that somebody's that annoyed that they've made this wee banner to bring into a stadium. Honestly, I'll recount the story about the guy. He said, I've been described as a dinosaur, and then at the next press conference, the wee dinosaur's there. So that's him making his petty point, as opposed to going, somebody thinks I'm a dinosaur. Maybe I should look into that and find out if I'm doing something, can I improve? But no, I'll just make this petty wee point. So that's a level of intelligence and sort of compassion they have for people who come out with a genuine comment about how things need to be improved. So it'll need to be a lot stronger, because honestly, I think they'd get a bit of pleasure out of seeing somebody bringing a banner in.
Well, David, can you remember waiting to see if Scotland had qualified? All the games were coming out. We had to rely on teams to do us a favour, and at some point, you must have thought, this is a disgrace. This is the SFA's fault. This can't go on again. You can't put us through this. It demoralises us to such an extent that we give up fighting.
They can, and they probably will. I don't think, all my lifetime, I think the SFA have been singularly useless. I don't think at any point they've had a national interest at heart. They're too protective of their own wee pots of gold and income streams and benefits, or whatever you want to call it. So, unless there's a radical change, I don't see anything.
But Alan was saying, though, David, that this could be a start to things, a podcast. So social media might be the way forward to get us talking and other podcasts talking about this and being disgruntled and showing our disgruntlement and pointing the finger, actually.
Listen, the donkey is not going to worry about a banner, and I don't think he's going to worry about a podcast unless you've got some really high-profile people giving it loudly daily. I don't think it's going to make any difference.
We've got two. I've got three. Me as well. Chris as well. Four. I don't know about you, David, but I've travelled with the Tartan Army.
I haven't. No, I'll hold my hands up. I haven't. No.
Well, I have. And I've been all over Europe following the Tartan Army. And you know what? Before we kind of blame managers, and we kind of blame this, that, and the next thing. But as you get a bit older, you look at the structures involved. You realise there's something more than the manager or the players to blame here. Who's at the top?
Correct.
And when you look at the top, you're exactly right. For decades, they've been unfit for purpose.
I'll rest my case.
Can I jump in there on that one? Nori, you're bang on there, saying that it started with the very, very first World Cup, I think in 1958 or 1954. Andy Beattie, manager, all he was allowed to take was 13 players. Two of them were goalkeepers.
Yep.
And this is the first time they actually had a manager. It was committees before that. But there was plenty of room for all the SFA officers, and they all went first class.
That's right. That's right.
The Blazers.
It's been from day one.
Yep. So, but
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say, Alan, here is social media a very good platform to take on the SFA?
Well, yeah, because let's face it, the SFA are about as much use as a one-legged man at an arse-kicking contest. You know, they're just not, you know, they're not fit for purpose. But, you know, we can sit and flag them off, but what we see, you know, we need to be offering up solutions and saying, well, this is what we're going to do, because you know, we can come at it and say, yes, here's the problem, but here's our solution. And that's, I think, you know, let's not talk about who's responsible. Let's talk about how do we fix it and what's the solution going to be. And, you know, we can talk about, you know, sending the SFA to prison for 25 years. But you know, it's how do we fix the solution? Now, one thing,
Alan, can you then get the Scottish government, who have had high profile people, you know, bragging about they're going over to watch the matches? They don't have any problem getting tickets. They're in a good salary. Would they step forward and support us against the SFA?
The problem is, Norrie, is the culture of the SFA is the culture of the Scottish government. You know, it's highly secretive, highly. You know, I know we're not a political show, but Robin McAlpine has suggested the solution, and what he talked about in one of his columns was he suggested a very powerful anti-corruption czar. So you could take cases of perceived corruption, small-scale corruption. You know, things. You know, let's say, for example, if you suspected that a chief executive was pilfering from a party, you could take that to this chief executive, to this ombudsman or whoever, and they would have powers to investigate that. And I think if we have something similar to that in Scottish football, an independent regulator set up by Parliament with real teeth and real powers, we can take all the complaints to them and they can investigate it. And they can, you know, and have somebody who's not from Scotland, have somebody from outside Scotland who's not part of this cosy little clique. You know, somebody who with real teeth and who really wants to do the job. And if we have that, then that would be a start, you know, and we have all this, you know, this kind of it's small scale corruption, but it's still corruption nonetheless. And, you know, it's very much a self-selecting group of insiders who are part, you know, who are not accountable to anybody, you know, whether that's the prosecutor's office, the Parliament, the Scottish government, the SFA, you know, they're all on this kind of gravy train together. So if there was some, you know, if there is, you know, the solution to darkness is always sunlight. So if we could have something like that, then that would be me. That would be the solution that I would have. Let's have a powerful Scottish football regulator we can take our complaints to. You know, not frivolous. No, you know, you're always going to have one or two people who will make it frivolous and things like that. But and then they'll be jumped on to try and get away. But what we need is, you know, we need credible, you know, a credible complaints. Credible with and offer up solutions. That would be my what I would suggest.
All right, Glenn, that does sound like a good idea. Having a SAR almost who oversees all this corruption in Scottish society. I mean, Sean Clarkin took Peter Murrell to court because it was SNP people's money he was claiming. Well, we're talking about football here, but it's the same process. This is our money. This is our ticket money. We want to see our team develop. We want to see our country go further and be well represented, and not to embarrass us or shame us. So where is all that money going? And you've identified on the show today about where the monies are going. So that is corruption, full stop. That would be the best way to do it, mightn't it?
Well, you could say it's corruption, or you could just say it's they're feathering their own nest. I mean, they're not, you know, 25% of salaries, it's all going through, I would imagine, that's all going through the books, etc. So you would need somebody, you know, I don't think it'd be an anti-corruption czar, but if there was somebody who could investigate it, actually, to be honest, I think if you actually had an investigative journalist go in there undercover, have a look into the organisation and look what they really spend their money on, and like compare them against other FAs, etc., and then put it on television, that would really help. But I think generally, what Alan said in general life, yeah, there should be an anti-corruption czar. I mean, we see examples of it right across society. So how can people argue against that? They can only really have a problem with it if they may be involved in things they wouldn't want exposed.
Or you could have a petition, the Tartan Army get themselves organised and put a petition to the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish Government, and say, look, this is what we're against. We want this sorted out because we're so embarrassed, and etc., etc. You might then get the attention of John Swinney, who's a football fan, and you might get Stephen Flynn, etc., etc., pulling a promotion in the Parliament.
I think if you reach a certain level, then they can be heard in Parliament, but you actually would probably be best lobbying for their support before you put it in, so that it actually has a backing, you know. But yeah, that's another option, you know.
Yeah, well, we're just coming to we've got one last minute. All I've got to talk about in the last minute is Scotland are playing Argentina tomorrow. I'm a big rugby fan. We've got no Finn Russell. You've said, a lot of people are saying, even though he's not he's injured or he's cup tied or playing with his club, there's going to be a chance for somebody else to shine. And we've got a really good chance against Argentina, although, again, it's the same as the football. We go across there and we think we've got a better chance to win, and we fail. We always fail. And that's because the SRU are in the same boat as the SFA, where they take so much money for themselves and their partners and their friends to fly over to these places, and they keep most money for themselves. We need a root and branch, root and branch, look at how this is run. And if we don't get the answers we want, then they get cleared out. But having said all that, Glenn, come on, Scotland. Come on, Scotland. We can do it. We can do it. I never got a chance to ask you about your travails over on the over in Boston and Miami, but I would want to maybe get that done next week, guys, if we can get a chance, just to get your best memories. But we're out of time tonight, so I've got to go. I've got to drive home now. You can see I'm in the car at my usual place. But listen, if you followed us all the way through to the end, think about subscribing, think about liking, and think about making a comment about what we're talking about, because without a comment or without people discussing it, we can't bring it any forward. I'm away, guys. All the very best.
Enjoy the sport this weekend, guys. See you later.
Cheers,
Cheers, guys.
All
All the best.
best.
That's right.